Hello. You'll notice you can't see me. We're going to do a little bit of hardware debugging here. Hopefully you can hear me. It appears that there should be audio coming through. Um, anyway, in the meantime, this computer is kind of dying, so we're going to try to make it work tonight, and then we're going to do some repairs or use a different computer in the future. But for now, just let me know if things sound wrong, broken, you can't hear things, etc., and if it crashes horribly, then that's the end of it. But why is this not working for me? Alright. Okay. 1 minute. Aha! Alright, I did a bunch of things to this before, and it died, and there I am. This isn't quite right. I should be square, whatever. Who cares? Can you guys actually hear me? Can anyone hear me? Let me debug this myself, actually. Aha, I can hear myself. Perfect. Alright. Onward! So, last time we were building a talent selector. This is a piece of UI and game system that would allow players to choose their way through a bunch of talents made by the game creator. Some things, depending on the game, could be different weapons, different passives, different activated abilities they could use, all sorts of things. And some resource that you get slowly, often your levels, or just talent points. In some games, you get a talent point most levels, some levels, sometimes you get multiple, whatever. And you can use those to buy talents. Sometimes you can reset all your talents. Last time we made a structure, a group that has some properties, and inside of it has talent trees, and inside of those they have all the talents. There's only one right now because it's an example, but you'd be able to have a lot more. And we wrote a rather sizable script, this one, that reads through this entire tree and checks a bunch of error conditions and gets all this data into a table so we can do useful things with it. That's going to drive me nuts that this isn't capitalized, so we're going to change that. I know last time I talked about this a whole bunch, and now we're changing it. Look at that. Talent tree table. Let's just do the old search and replace. Replace all. Bam. Okay. Great. Didn't error. Perfect. Okay. And the plan was, we talked about all the things we need to do. Replicated player talent state. So we need some system that each player, basically you need this at the client and the server, because the clients need to be able to display the UI to let the players select their talent. Maybe your game features a scoreboard that also shows what talents you've selected or what key talents you've selected maybe, and what your opponents have selected. And basically every client and player needs to know what talents each player has selected, and we don't even have a system for the players to select talents at all right now. We don't have a way for them to, there's no state about that sort of thing. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and then we're going to build it. Since this is pretty customizable, customly designable to be, you can have a lot of talents, few talents. You could have an enormous Path of Exile style tree that has, just a passives all over the place. For people who haven't played that, let me find a screenshot. You can appreciate this. Path of Exile talent tree. As you can tell from this thing right here, let me get the one that's lit up. This is half of it, or like less than half of it. Well, anyway, you see this. Nope, that's text. There are spots everywhere. Every single one of those white dots is a talent. It's madness. Okay. So, we're not able to. Clearly, we designed it with some constraints in mind, like that it's a square grid, which that is not. But we want to um, not depend on it, make any invalid assumptions when doing this sort of thing. So there's a structure that I like to build where you spawn an object per player. I did a networked object that has a bunch of custom properties on it, network properties. And this is kind of your player state object. And so each player has the state. They have a bunch of data about them. Uses the networking replication system built in, and the server can set those values, and anyone can read those values. And if you want to find the one for a specific player, we do something specific for that. We maybe put them in a folder and name them based on the player's ID or something like that. That is what I'll do here, I think. So that the client can find them without having any other data associated. The IDs are guaranteed to match. And we kind of want a way to encode which talents you've selected. So the way we built this, we look at the talent options. Each talent can have a cost. You could have one talent that costs 5 levels instead of 1, but there's no talents you can put multiple points in. Although many systems do support that, that's something we're not handling right now. And so with that in mind, all we need to know is for every single talent, does this player have that talent? Yes or no? That is a little bit too much information, but that's fine, which is to say it's sort of like a purely mathematical theoretical point of view that there are states where if that's all the data I have for each talent, whether or not you have it, there are combinations of data I could put there that are not valid. I could say I have this talent at the bottom of the tree, I don't have any of the requirements. Well, that's nonsense. You can't be in that state. But trying to handle that in a slightly more efficient way is a lot of work, and replication only costs you networking traffic when things change, and players are not expected to change their talents very often. In fact, even if a player goes to a vendor at some point and says, or uses some in-game mechanic and resets all the talents. I guess my reference point is WoW, where you talk to a vendor to do this, and then they go sit there and click, 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 and pick all the talents they want. Each of those clicks is still maybe half a second apart. This isn't rocketing through gameplay. There's nothing automatic filling this out and changing it constantly. You're not doing a lot. Am I selecting out this thing? Okay. So I think we can do this in a kind of an efficient manner that is easy to work with and easy to read, which is per tree, we can, the constraint here, sorry, one more detail before I get to where I'm going, is that we need to, ahead of time, I need to right now create the form of this networked object, right? I can't do that dynamically. I can't add network properties to an object. So I need to know exactly what network properties this thing has, and try to encode all of the talent data for every talent tree into one object is, I don't know how big that is, so I basically have to jam it all into like one string, for example, which I can actually do. That is one, there's kind of like basically, let me create this object, new group, add custom property. Well, I need to encode a bunch of data in here. I can't change how many of these properties there are, so that one property has to account for any number of talents that are available. So it can't be any of these finite size types. It has to be a string. We could do one for everything, encode all of every tree into one string, or, excuse me, we could do this one per tree. Or if we were really crazy, we could actually have this object be a single boolean, that is, if you have this talent, and then just spawn these things, spawn tons of them. Objects actually have some overhead, so I think using a string to encode it saves us a lot of trouble, having tons of these things. I mean, if a reasonable talent tree might have 20 objects, or 20 options, and you might have 3 talent trees per player. And different classes might have different talent trees. We don't have a way to encode that, so maybe there's 8 talent trees and 20 things. That's 160. If we have that times 8 players or 16 players, that is a lot of objects. We're working with thousands of objects. We're not doing that. So we're using a string. So I'm going to call this talent string. And the question is, do we do this one per tree or just one per player? If we had 8 trees and 16 players, that could be 128 objects. I think that's okay. That's not a crazy number. Um, you do have to spawn these, which has some cost. When the player connects and disconnects, you destroy them. Thinking I will start with 1 per tree and see how that goes. And if we run into problems, we can change it later. The system's going to be kind of abstracted away a little bit, so it's easy to adjust. So I'm going to rename this. Actually, I'm just going to name it, make it a template. Create new template from this. Let's make this networked first. So we don't need to put anything in here. The default is nothing. The other scripts will handle it. And this is helper. All of my templates that are used by other templates, but not something you'd want to put in your game, I use the prefixed helper. So we are going to say helper player talent tree state. Maybe I'll put in a. I don't like the thing I don't like about that name is it makes sense in English, but player state is connected together and talent tree is connected together, and having the split is weird. So helper player state talent tree, because realistically, if I use the system in a larger game, I might have other player state stuff being stored, and I might probably not to this degree, because then we'd run into the same limits I was just talking about, but maybe 1 object per player that stores their mana and their I don't know their could be their level or the talent points or whatever other nonsense. So here we go. We've got a template. It's got one thing in it. It turned orange. They're supposed to always be orange. That'll be fixed hopefully soon. What that is for networked properties. And I would point out that this won't work if this thing is not networked. So we're going to network it. You can't change the property on a non-networked object. In fact, I believe if I hit play, I would have gotten some warnings, or if I tried to use it, maybe I would have gotten warnings. Okay. So then, so here's our utility script. This was a script that we were expecting to require from other scripts. We haven't built those yet. And it had the shared functionality. I'm actually going to use the code collapsing behavior of Sublime here, even though it's not the thing I usually care much about, but it collapses entire functions, and we wrote this function. We're happy how it works. We don't need to look at the details of it. Okay. So then how do we, what is the API we actually need for this? Also, these are functions other scripts might call. These are functions that are internal. So the information we need is basically, does a player have a talent? And that's interesting. I'm thinking ahead a little bit. We need to know, does a specific player have a talent? Simple. Or maybe what talents do they have? Like, in the point of view of the local player, you want to be able to render the talent tree and get all the talents. I can call it once per talent. Maybe that's fine. And just as I'm going through, I'm going to be spawning objects per talent and saying for this one, do they have it? Use that to make the button enabled or disabled. Use it to change the coloring. And then look at some other conditions. Do they have the talents, the levels or talent points to spend into it? Do they have the requirements? All that kind of stuff. So we're going to have function utility dot does player have talent? I'm wondering what the other scripts are going to be passing around. Are they actually going to have the entire talent data struct? Or call it a struct, it's a table. Are they going to have all these pieces? I think so. I think they're going to need all these pieces to be able to render it correctly. Player have talent, player talent data. Okay, easy enough. And then we'd also probably want the checking in here, maybe not. So the checking has got to be kind of redundant. The client has to check if you can take a thing because it needs to know how to render it ahead of time, so even before you take it. And then the server needs to check when you actually try to take a talent to say, do we actually agree this player can take a talent? Not just to handle like cheating, but just to handle cases where someone's spamming a button or some, there's slight replication timing things, and you want to have the server be authoritative, and not even have the prediction on the client. Just you press the button, and if it thinks you can take it, it does. There are some cases I can speak to in certain games that are much less time sensitive. So in a shooter or a fast-paced game, the replication level tends to be about as fast as your ping, right? Or maybe 2 pings, as fast as it can be. We're talking 1/60th of a second, 1/30th second, something like that. And that's not very noticeable. And if you have a little bit of a time window where you can, if you triple click within 2 frames, it does something horrible, that almost never shows up. And if it does, you just make it do nothing and the users don't notice. In a game like WoW, I'm talking one very specific example. In WoW, I'm trying to remember exactly how this works. That there are checks that have to be passed on client and server. For example, casting a spell, you have to have line of sight of your target, and the server is the authority there. So if the server says you don't have line of sight, it cancels your cast. Too bad, even if something laggy's happen. But the client won't even let you try if you don't have line of sight. And there are cases that I've been frustrated in where I know someone's lagging or they're gonna come around the corner or something, and I'm smashing that button and it won't even let me try. And then they appear, and then the server cancels it because they're actually a little bit farther ahead. And I'm like, I never got a window here, even though there was a window on the client and a window on the server. They never lined up. WoW is very slow. It's something I actually like about the game. As I've gotten older, brain is a little bit less, my reflexes are a little worse. It's great. Um, but in our case, we don't have to worry about this because it's going to be quick. We're in the quicker case here. Unreal is fast. It doesn't do anything. We're not doing anything manual to make things slow down. We're just going to let it go. So function utility try set player talent data try get player talent or take activate. I don't think we need to be able to unactivate a talent. I think that we talked about later as a feature that we'd be able to clear the whole tree, which is normally the cheap solution to this. You have one button that clears the whole tree, then you can take the talents again if you really want. In the game that we were designing this for, I don't think we'll even have that. I think we'll get to the point of, well, you can take talents and that's it, they're permanent, and worry about it later if a need comes up. So try add player talent. There we go. All right. So one thing I'm going to add here are some comments. Server and client, so I don't mess myself up. Server and client. Server only. All right. So this script has been used in both contexts. And if you call this in the wrong context, it's going to do some horrible things, and we want to be aware of that. I probably should get some quicker or better way to write this. How did I write this in the, let's see, something. API, damage, and object. Do one of these have a client? My damage. I didn't write this one. That's all right. I kind of like how those strings were. This is fine for now. All right, and the other thing we need to know is this script is not in the hierarchy. We might be able to actually make this work. When I wrote all the components, I avoided a bunch of things that required scripts could do because a very convoluted course of usage would result in basically if I dragged a piece into my game that used one version of the API and then we changed how the API worked, updated it a little bit, maybe fixed a bug, and then you dragged another piece in that used it, you'd end up with 2 copies of the same API script that were almost the same. And I made sure that the scripts actually worked in that case, that it didn't depend on any local data or anything. If you have 2 slightly different versions, they would save their data in a global place, they'd know how to work. Great. We don't have to worry about that here. If we update this, then people can get the new version entirely. Okay, so with that in mind, we need to actually create these things when players join and delete them when players leave. Maybe we'll put that at the top. Function on player joined. I really hope that this works. We're going to find out. because this script isn't in the hierarchy, I think it'll be fine. I see the problem here. We need to spawn a thing. We can't have a core object reference to that thing. We can pass them in a function. That is actually a feature coming in the future, that you can put properties on a script in your product content down here. It's not here now. Game. Yeah. Player joined event. Splam always recommends the wrong one. Every time. It's convenient for consistency, at least. Alright. So we're going to store these in a table. We need to know what to spawn. For now, what I think I will do is I'm going to make this not a... Oh, that's interesting. I was going to have an initialize function that calls this and passes in a bunch of things that you need to know, or at least this one thing. Maybe that's the way to go. Function utility initialize talent tree data tree root player state template. And then this guy, sort of an ugly pattern here. We're trying to avoid duplicating code, so we are, but they're not going to be quite the same, right? Only the server cares about this. The client doesn't have to spawn these at all. And I don't know if we actually have an easy way to tell if we're on the server or the client with this script. Besides specifically like having a separate function. Maybe that's fine. There is a pattern here, right? Which is with a dedicated server, with an actual published game, the server always starts up before any players join. If you go to the web, if I go to coregames.com, it might even tell me to log in. Yep. Sign in. Let's drag you over here for a second. While I embarrassingly mistype my password and that kind of thing, you know. Interesting. It offered to save my password for like a quarter of a second and then vanished. All right, so if I go here and pick a game that no one's playing, so I just scroll down to Spaceship. Nope. Sure. Spaceship Test Map. Obviously, no one's playing this game. It wasn't even public. Or maybe it was. Maybe this was the public one. And I just click play. The backend starts up a server. And then when the server's ready, I connect to it. That being said, it still takes a while to connect. The server definitely runs the scripts like, I don't know, for 20 seconds, 10 seconds before I connect. That's a lot of stuff going on. So you can be very sure that any server scripts will run before a player connects. But you have to test your game. And testing your game is very convenient, but happens in the editor where this is just not true at all. Whoops, I lost everything. Okay. In the editor, when you hit play, preview mode, bam, you're there, first frame. So you can't depend on that. In fact, I guess player join event does happen for you if first script that runs in the first frame. I haven't really tested this out, actually. I guess what I'm thinking is if I have a function in another script that calls into here and does this, and this connects these things, are they actually going to happen? Because I need one for myself. I hope so. We could just, we can do the workaround anyway. We can just see if the players are already in the game, and if so, call their joined events. That seems fine. Okay, so initialize talent tree data. Talent tree server. I'm actually going to make this two separate functions because this is going to do a lot of things the client one isn't. In fact, I'm going to put all this stuff right in the function. Lua, functions are just types. like any others, you can put them right inside of each other. Bam. I'm defining functions inside a function. All right, so that one's clearly a server. We'll have a client one that just does, in fact, the client could just call this. That seems fine. Maybe we don't need to hide this behind another function if it's doing nothing else. If the clients later need to do more things with initialization, we will do that. Let's say client server calls this from this guy. And in fact, if this is server only, maybe we don't need to put server on the name. I was only going to do that if I had a client version. Okay. All right, so what do? We define these two functions. We are going to connect them, and we're going to call this guy. So we read telemetry definitions, fine. We handle spawning these things. We need to store off the objects we have, and we need a lot of them. We need to know how many talent trees there are, which is the size of this table. Although the keys are the tree names, so we can't just, we actually have to iterate through it. Or maybe this function should store off how many trees there are. That actually seems pretty important. The question of if each tree itself should somehow store how many talents it has, I don't think that's needed. But I think we should have how many talent trees there are. Local talent tree count. You know, that doesn't help us because we need to know the talent tree. We need to know more about the talent trees in order to make these useful. In which case we have to iterate through them anyway. Okay. Yeah, there's quite a bunch tonight. Alrighty. Anything? Let us continue with this. So, what we need to do is store off local player. We could put this in player user data. No, that doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's pretty equivalent. The server needs to actually keep track of these objects to destroy them. Maybe it doesn't. We have to find them on the client, right? And that's why I said we were going to name them something specific so we could find them. In which case we could use the same logic to destroy them. We don't need to store them into a table somewhere. We can just spawn them. All right, so local for talent tree name blank in pairs talent tree table do. Okay, we don't care what the talent tree data is. All we care is that there's a name. So we're going to use that. Local state player state helper equals world dot spawn asset. All right. There's an argument that I should stick these in a group somewhere. Maybe. That would require having another thing passed in. If they're just in the tree, that's okay. A lot of our games have just spawn a bunch of crap in the tree when you run them. This one, we could pass in an argument. Player state template, player state group. Okay. How wide can we make this? That wide. All right, now we're going to set the parent. Just keep them organized. If you pause, they're all in one group somewhere. We don't need to transform anything. That doesn't matter. We're going to need a function up here somewhere that finds one of these because every time we need for these functions to implement them, we're going to say, hey, can we find this replicator? That's what we're looking for. Player state helper, we spawned one, and then we need to set its name. That is how we're going to find them. We could have made a template that was just a blank group and like spawned this tree and used the tree as the thing, one folder per player, and inside of that one thing with the name of the talent tree or something. I think we can just jam into the name and find it by name. There won't be that many in here. Name equals player dot, let's see, how do we want to do this? String dot format. I like string dot format. I don't like concatenating. It's much cleaner to read. So as the player ID is the one thing we need, and the talent tree name is the other thing. We know the talent tree names don't overlap, So we could just literally do player ID dash talent tree name. Player ID is a string, talent tree name also a string. Perfect. Player ID, talent tree name. Okay, that's it. That's all we need to do. So when a player joins, we spawn a whole bunch of these, one for talent tree. On player left, let's add this other function. We're going to have to find them, so we can function get talent player state helper, player state helper, player talent tree name. So you need one per talent tree, makes sense. There's one thing I didn't mention before, that part of the design of this game might be that there are, and a lot of games, that there are talent trees that are not available to every player, right? Maybe there's 6 talent trees and each player gets 2 at random. Maybe there's 3 talent trees per class, but you get to pick one of 5 classes. Right now, we're just being kind of overly redundant, or redundant. We're spawning too many of these things. We're putting one for every talent tree, even if the players can't possibly use those. I think that we'll consider that when we get to that system later, if this is actually a problem, if we're spawning too many things, versus just, well, there's no UI for you to even select the things, so whatever. That's that. Um, yeah, I don't think it'd be that hard to add later, which we might end up doing, where we on initialize, the server actually learns about those rules. Maybe they're in some custom property somewhere, and then actually randomizes and stores off which, maybe it only spawns ones for the trees you got, and then we use that as like, oh, if the thing's not there, then that's not available to you. Only use the ones that are available. So for this, we are going to try to find a thing. So we need to store this off. That's important. Local player state group, because we need to be able to find it. Spacebar, please. All right. So what is our API here? There's a get something by name. What is that called? Find ancestor by name. Find child by name. Yeah, great. I was hoping that I could use both its parent and its name to be more efficient. First meet a child whose name matches the previous name. None matches. Great. Okay. So return player state group. Find child by name. And this, all we need is the name. So we're just going to, this thing right here, blap. Okay. That's a pretty simple function. It's possible we should put this into a function somewhere. Leave it for now. All right, so on player left, we're going to copy this whole thing. Boop. For talent tree name, local player state helper equals, we're not spawning one anymore. We are get player state helper, player talent tree name. If we got one, we better have gotten one. This is the, I'm not even going to check, because if it's not there, then we've got other problems and we should know about them, and we're going to destroy them. Simple as that. Okay. So when a player joins, we spawn a bunch of these things. When they leave, we destroy a bunch of these things. And we also make sure to call this function on the server. The client can just call this function directly. Remember, there's actually stuff in here. That's what that yellow subtle ... means. Okay, we wrote this guy, and now we need to write these. Does player have talent? And try add player talent. Because, excuse me, we didn't actually talk about what the string is. We didn't actually write anything to it. In fact, we should at least test that this doesn't error before we go on to more stuff. Boop. Oh, we don't call it, of course. Talent test. So we don't need this in our hierarchy anymore. We do need that hierarchy. Oh, no, we don't. Okay. Talent selector utility group. We're going to make another group. Talent player state helpers. Player state helpers. We're going to put reference to that. What else do we need to pass into this function? True player state helper and the template itself. So we need this guy. Okay. And now we can get rid of that. That guy goes first. Is that actually the order they're in? It's kind of fine. Group is next. Player state helpers is the, what did I call that in the other script? Something group. Player state group. I'm going to change the name of the property too. And player state template. I realized I made the name of the template longer. Whatever. All right. So instead of calling read talent tree definition, we're now, since we're on the server, we don't have a client script yet. We'll make that in a second. Initialize talent tree data. And it needs, same, I called it group really. That's terrible. Tree root. I guess it was a test script. The script will probably end up being turned into the real script. And then it needs the template and the group in whatever order. Well, in the right order. I don't know if I like this order, but template group. Yeah, I feel like this order should be switched. That's fine. Okay. Hit play. Error. 271. Attempt to call a nil value. Read talent tree definition. 271. Read talent tree definition. Oh, that's because it's inside the table. Yep, that makes sense. Oop, no errors. And if I look at my helpers, there's one in here. It's my ID, and fire is the name of the tree. Perfect. So I'm going to copy this, call it ice, copy that, call it frost, shadow. Frost and ice are often the same thing in games. And now I pause, and there's 3 of them. In fact, I don't have to pause. And even better, if I go to multiplayer, 1 minute. This guy a bunch smaller. You see there are, oh, they didn't get named. Do we have script errors? We don't have script errors. That is most interesting. Why did they not get named? What happens if I add another client? Let's watch. I clicked on this, so the client's behind. No names. No. I don't know what to say about that. We're gonna debug in a minute. Before we do that, let's add some details in here. All right, so debug helpers missing names. Add client test script. I want to have the, I want to know about errors on that before we keep adding more and more things. Implement. I try to keep my to-do list as soon as I get to the point where I'm like, I might forget things. This is getting to the point where I might let something go through the cracks because I'm handling too many things or getting, distracted, pulled to the side a little bit. So that's where we are. I want to add the client test script. Yes. So I'm going to make a new thing. Talent test client. We can rename these later. Create client context, contain this. In fact, I'm going to do something even cheaper. Nope. I want all the custom properties on this. I'm just duplicating it and then changing what script it is by dragging over the script property. I'm going to rename it. So now I have all the same custom properties on it without having to do something. Put these up here. Do I actually need all of these? I don't need. I do need the group. It needs to know where to look, but I don't need the template. In fact, that's important. I didn't think about that. So maybe we do need a second initialize function because this is not enough. Okay. Let's look at the script for a little bit. And client needs init function reorg slightly, as we were talking about before. Sorry about the gentle drone in the background. My upstairs neighbor's shower is nuclear powered. It's very loud, I don't know why. Alright, so for right now, we're going to call this one to see if it does anything horrible. That's not what I want to do eventually. Actually, I'm going to... Boop. Sometimes when I want to test a change, but I think the line there is important or I need something, I simply duplicate it and comment it out. So if I do that, this should not produce any errors. Okay. And they got their names again because I did single player preview. Alright, so now let's, great, we did that. Client needs a init function, reorg slightly. Yes, it does. Okay, so this has going to get server back in the name again because this is a server only function. And we're going to have a function right above it. That's the same thing, client. I tend to have orderings in my head, and I think this is not that unique to me, but I think it is possibly somewhat unique to me. This is going in a very large tangent. I like to talk about things. Generally, your human experience is from your own point of view, and people tend to assume that what they experience is normal. And as you grow up, you tend to get a judgment of like, or the ability to judge how much a certain thing might be very unique to you, or might be something that almost everyone experiences. So people say, you know, oh, I'm frustrated by this. People who drive too slow in the left lane. Like, yeah, lots of people are frustrated with that. That happens all the time. Well, not in the last week or two, but you know. Versus something very strange. And this is one of those where I'm like, I actually have never checked with someone else. I don't know how different this is. And I've noticed some things about my own experience. For example, I don't remember colors basically at all. If you ask me what color someone's wearing, obviously that's a common example. But if you ask me like what color was the building that we were in yesterday, or the inside of the room, I often have no idea. Or I tend to remember names by the pattern of consonants and vowels. So my two nephews, named Calvin and Jasper, have the same name in some extent. Obviously, I know their names apart, but Calvin and Jasper are consonant, vowel, consonant, consonant, vowel, consonant. Anyway, that was a big tangent. Point we're going at here is I tend to order things, and I have no idea if other people do this too. It's very clear, like in my brain, position, rotation, scale in that order every time. Client's always before server. Don't know why, but I have very strict orderings, and so this is how I put things in files because that's how it obviously is. It's just in my brain. The client one doesn't need that. It still needs to do this line. Basically, it just does these two lines. So this value, when you require a script, talked about this last time. When you require a script, it runs the script through just like it runs another script. But then when a second script also requires the same script, it doesn't do that again. It just says, oh, we already have that table. We already stored it off. Here's the same table they got from the other script. That is only true in one context, right? A server and client don't share this because they're different computers, possibly very far away. So this needs to be stored on server and client independently. That's what we're doing here. And then calling this function, yep, we need to read all the data again, same thing. It sets these values independently. We don't need to do any of this spawning stuff. The server handles that, the client can't. And then we need to take this out of utility because people should not be. I'm just going to take that right out of there and just say, yep, the other things are calling this. Don't call it yourself. Okay. So we're going to go here. Now we don't need to call this, we need to call this. We need to add client to it. Client. And we're going to get rid of this. Okay. Hopefully that is what we need. Perfect, no errors. I definitely believe that that is perfect and not because it didn't run my code. This is the, how do I word this? If you, as an aspiring programmer, write a bunch of code and then hit compile and it says there are no errors, there's only one explanation, and it is that it did not read your code. This is not, you can never write it correctly the first time. That doesn't happen. If you tell me otherwise, I'll assume you're lying. All right, debug helpers, missing names. Yes, okay. This is not debug helpers missing names, it's debug that helpers are missing names. So when I went to multiplayer preview, It occurred to me today they have no names. Okay, we're gonna add some prints and try to figure that out. I should talk about to some point that Core does have a script debugger, and it's honestly pretty good. It works similar to Visual Studio's debugging in that, well, any visual debugger, you've got breakpoints and you can read variables and inspect things. It is script debugger. It's here. What you do is you turn this on and it toggles it. And you can use this if you just want to, if you hit an error, you just want to stop there. And you can hit play, step over things, and you can, what you do is you open a script. Where's my script? Utility. You edit it in the core, not in an external editor, and you find the line you want to debug. I'm just going to do this to show you how it works. I actually like print statements a lot because I find this a slightly unwieldy, and print statements are pretty quick, but this is how you could do this. Where is our new function? Right here. Okay. Put a breakpoint there. Tell it that I want to stop there, and hit play. It occurred to me today that I could listen to music while I'm streaming as long as I'm not, so this isn't working. That's because the editor broke. I could listen to music as long as I'm not streaming the music, not because I don't think you guys like music, but because I don't like telling people what to listen to, and I don't need my VODs to be, something streaming music that's I don't have legal rights to or something. I don't know. All right, so we have a helper, and we're trying to set the name. Player state helper. Is that a variable I have here? Did it fail? Event running. Player bot1. Do they have an ID? It's bot1. That's an ID. Okay, sure. And we've got talent rename ice. Sure, that's the one I hit first. Why not? What is under? Oh, I see. Underscore is. That is interesting. I thought this is a Lua convention where it just throws away that data. It actually got stored into something. I wonder if this is us not following the convention, or if this is actually how it's just a convention that people do, but it doesn't actually have any fancy behavior. Okay, let us see. Is my stream actually working? It appears to be. Okay. Sometimes when I have my stream open while I'm streaming, just to like check, I mute it and look at chat, and it just like freezes up. Probably because I don't know, too many things going on. Okay, why are we not actually setting the name of this guy? Player state helper is not a variable? What did we just spawn? Player state template, player state group, talent tree table. Yep. So I have one here, and you'll notice the client timed out, I think. Oh no, it's still sitting here. Great. I thought it would time out and disappear. Maybe it knows that we're paused on a script. I don't think we can step into this so much as step over it. And it did nothing. Let's step into this guy. And now we've got fire. Fire state template. Step over. Fire state helper. It spawned something. It made something, but it didn't save it? What is this madness? Oh, player state helper is right here. Okay. Name. Helper player state helper. It's probably going to disappear when I go to the next step because it's no longer in scope, which is unfortunate. Yeah, we're going to put some print statements, or I guess we could change the code around so the debugger would help us more, but I'm also just going to switch to using print statements here. Okay. I'm actually a little worried that I found a real bug, but we're going to do some debugging. Let's copy that line. Okay. If I go in here, close the debugger. Okay, I need the names of them in there. Arr. Concatenation, my favorite. Yep, it doesn't know how to do that because this is being, if you give it a single value, it automatically calls to string on it, and if you try to concatenate, it assumes it's a string, and when it's not, it complains. That may have been easier to, we may have hit the point where string.format would have been better. Okay, so those clearly got renamed, as you expect. And in multiplayer, they got renamed, but the editor doesn't think so. This is interesting. See this up here? This is a bug in the hierarchy view in multiplayer preview. Okay, well, we'll report that, but for now, I mean, the script's going to see the right name and it's going to work. So we'll keep going. Okay, implement does player have talent? No, return false. Just kidding. Try add player talent. Also return false. I'm wondering if I should do a different night than Fridays. There's far fewer viewers, which makes sense. People are out doing, or out. They're in doing things. They're, playing video games and drinking beers and whatever people do on Friday nights, watching TV. Does player have talent? Okay, so the first thing we need to do for these functions is this guy. The talent data. Does the talent data know what tree it's in? That seems like an important thing that I would need to know that it may not know. Tree name. It sure does. Sweet. Good thing I thought of that. Huh. Okay. So get player state helper. We've got the player, we've got the tree name. Local helper equals that guy. I'll call it player state helper, be specific. All right, so we haven't talked about the actual encoding here. We just have a string that's going to magically encode all the talents, and that's that. And if we drag one of these templates back into the hierarchy, it's really just a string with nothing. So if I go to, I'm going to talk about my insight a little bit here. Everyone's favorite website, Wowhead, is what's his name? He's not watching anymore. Stan Zilt was watching before. He's familiar with Wowhead. Somewhere on these tools, people who've played WoW for way too long they have talent calculators. So I go in here, pick out the character I played for way too long, and I can select some talents. And I say I want these, and you'll notice that the URL is slightly changing as I do this. It's encoding this so I can send it to someone else and they can say, oh, those talents suck. These are the new style talents. If I go to, I actually expect this to be a little different form. So somewhere on here, where is the button I'm looking? So Wowhead currently supports 2 versions of WoW because there are 2 versions of WoW, and I want the old version of WoW. It's clearly on here somewhere. Classic. There we go. Aha! Here we go. So I put a bunch of points into things. And if you watch the URL, you will see that what they're doing is for every tree, it literally just starts at the top left like you're reading a book. It says, here's the number of points you have in here, here's the number of points you have in here, there. And it just stops when you stop having points. Then it puts a dash to the next tree, dash to the next tree. We're just very simple. Similar, I think, is how I was going to do this. I don't need to have all those extra edge cases, and we're only doing this for one tree, but I'm literally just going to go top left, bottom to bottom right like you're reading a book, and just ones and zeros. This is not the most efficient way of coding a bit where a whole character is being used. We could do something a little bit fancier, but like I said, these aren't being replicated very often, only when you change talents. And being easy to read. If we have a bug later on where someone doesn't seem to have the right talent or can't select the right talent, being able to pause and click on the thing and say, and read the string and actually be able to make sense of it without having to like go look at the code and try to run some math on it would really be helpful. Okay. So what we need to do is, there's a lot of things we're going to do here. That's why this is our, why this is a multi-day task. Oh, Stanzill is back. I don't know if he caught the bit where I was looking at Wowhead. Maybe he heard it. You know, he had a calling in his head. So to tell if a player has a talent, we just need to find the single, like what index does that talent have. We could, instead of doing it left top left to bottom right, which I guess is how we want to do this. I think we could like store this data into these just as we add them, just put like index 1, index 2. But I think what we should do is in the bottom of this function, we still want each talent to know which index it has rather than having to figure it out every time. But I think that we can, at the bottom of this function, after we put all the talents in, the same thing here where we're checking for requirement errors, we could also then sort them in some way and give them their indices. So there's a sort function. It's a table.sort, I think. If you've used standard template library in C or containers in C#, Python, whatever, they tend to have sort functions. This is exactly, I like the Lua sort function. It's simple, it does exactly what you want, and there's no complex mess to it. You give it a list and it sorts it. If you give it a comparator, it uses that. That's it. Comparator is a function that tells it how to evaluate how to compare two pieces. Otherwise, it let's see, what does it do otherwise? It just uses the less than operator and hopes that those types know how to be compared. If they don't, then I don't know what it does. Okay. That being said, sorting maybe this doesn't actually help us, right? Because sorting tends to work with it assumes you have a table of integer indices and it changes their indices, and our indices here are the actual names, so we can't change those. Maybe we make another table. Let's think about this a little bit, and then we'll worry about these later. Implement talent indices. So we don't do this for trees because there just aren't that many trees, and we're not using this kind of thing. It's only for the talents. Each talent knows its x and y coordinates, so it's easy to compare them. So in here, in this talent group, or let's see, yeah, in this guy right here, there's a talent group. It's a table where every key is the talent name and the entries of the talent data. But the talent data themselves also know their names. So we can iterate through all the talent data and jam them into a different table. It's a little bit inefficient. And then we can sort that table. And then we can set those as the indexes in the data itself, and then just abandon that table because we would have, like I talked about last time, when you make a table equal to another table, you have 2 pointers to the same table. You change one of them, the other one gets the change. So we're going to, for talent data in, yeah, so we're still inside a for loop. Yep, okay. Let's move this comment down one, because that's only for that. Get talent indices. Local talent data copy, or talent data array. The keyword array indicates that we're using integers for indices. Huh. We don't actually need to do this per talent. We need to put the talents in the array. Then we need to... I got a blong. Who sent me a message? Nope, that's not important. Alright. Well, it's important, but I'll talk to him later. Whoops. I've hit that hotkey a few too many times. Okay. So we're just going to insert these into this other table. Then talent data array function. Talent 1, talent 2. I'm going to actually define this not inline because it's going to be, I want to make this a little more readable. Just define it right here. Compare talents. If talent 1 dot tree y, is that what I called the value? Tree y. It's not equal to talent 2 dot tree y. Basically, if they're equal, we care about x. If they're not equal, we just care about y is enough information for us. Returns true when the first element must come before the second. Okay. So I believe this will work as we want. I'm actually going to put data in the names here since that's what it is. We talked about our consistent naming last time. All right. So if the y values are not different, or are different, then we care, is it less? If so, returns true. Is it more? Then return false. If they're the same, we have to look at x. Same deal. We somewhere in here we checked that the x and y's didn't overlap with other trees. This guy right here. So we got that. We'd already had a problem, and this talent won't even be in the thing. Okay. So we sort our array, and now the indices are their, like literally they're their indices. So for I talent data in pairs, talent data array, do talent data dot index equals I. Okay, so we've added an index field to every talent data. Should be up here. I renamed it part of that. That tells you where it is in the ordering. And hopefully, if I did this correctly, the top leftmost one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we can use that down here. We can just get the index and use that to find the element of the string. We'll use the same data. And yeah, that will help us find if this is true. Is that value a 1 or a 0? We're going to have some pretty boring strings. We're going to try this out anyway. All right, so player state helper. If we don't find one, we're in trouble. I think we're at the point with sort of a question of error checking. Last time we were pretty careful about things that a designer might do that would cause problems and making sure they have useful error messages. Now we're in the land of things that I could do wrong, in which case I don't need to be too rigorous about it. It's a pretty big project and it would help, but in this case, if you don't find this, it's going to be a pretty clear message. It's going to say this is return index nil, and well, that's something horribly wrong. These are supposed to be spawned right here. Every player should always have one for every talent. It's not there, we're in trouble. If you can't find the talent or the tree, that's also very strange. You can't get a talent data just out of nowhere. You have to, maybe you could pass in the wrong type of object or something, but these should always be valid. All right, so we're not going to check if it's not there. Local talent string equals, I believe, we literally just call it talent string, right? Let's just assume that and not check. It's called talent string, great. And I don't actually know how Lua indexes strings. We're going to find string dot format to find the actual section I want, because string is referenced all over the place. So if you want to find the section with all the string functions, look for one. Receives 0 or more integers, returns a string with length equal to the number of arguments, in which each character has the internal numeric code. Codes are not necessarily portable across platforms. Internal numeric code of the characters. Can I just index the string? These are very interesting. So this gives you internal numeric codes. What does that even mean? Oh, I guess, okay. I'm starting to process this. This doesn't take a string. Internal numeric codes are what you'd expect to be like ASCII values with Lua's name. And I wonder if I could actually make a character literal here. And this is saying, give me a string with these values. I want ASCII value 37, ASCII value 43, or whatever. That's kind of our character literal. Or this is saying, give me the values of these things. I can just do this in stringland and not even worry about those. I can, where's the one I want? I just want a substring. Yeah, okay, perfect. Local talent return string.sub. There's the string length. J. Use negative numbers. Starts at I and continues until J. Interesting. The previous ones were that many characters. Basically, so I take the index, which is a number from 1 to however many talents you have, and that's the character in the string. Might help to actually. Basically, we have a string that looks like this. This is whether or not the player has the first talent, the second talent, the third talent, and we're asking talent number 5. That's what they passed in. So we're going to get this character out of this string. So we sub 5 and 5. It gives a string from 5 to 5. It's going to give us literally the string that. So that. If it's not 1, then you don't have it. If it is 1, you do. That's how we find out. All right. We might need to, I guess we can do a little bit of in our test scripts to make this work. We can try to add talents and make our talent tree a little more complicated and valid. Have Fireball and Fireball 2 and 3 and 4 or something like that. All right, so try add player talent needs to handle a bunch of cases, which we already have some of the work for. We have get required talent data, so we can make sure they have all the required talents. We haven't talked yet. We've mentioned what that a player spends some resource to get these, but we haven't actually made that decision, and we probably need to, because try add player talent is also going to be the thing that, if they can take it, it removes that data or that resource. And let's see what else we need to do here. So what other cases could you? We're talking about adding later the part where you don't have access to all the trees, but it's like, do you have the required talent? Do you have the required resources? Do you have the required levels? Yes. So one of our properties on here is required level. So there's required talents, required level, and cost is the resource. So let us add this to this guy. Try add player talent. Check cost, check level, check requirements. If so, change data. All right. I will be right back. So I run to the restroom. Be back in 1 minute. have returned. All right, so we are implementing triad player talent. We need to check these different things, and we need to figure out and actually nail down what these resources are and how we even define them. What is your level resource and what is the cost? I mentioned talent points. It's a generic term that they may just come from levels, but a creator could want them to come from other things. You could find an item that gives you talent points. You could, you know, you could have a system like I mentioned before where you reset all your talents, in which case it would just hand you a bunch of talent points rather than trying to change your level again. And also, if it's actually tied to your level, do you lose level when you spend them? I've only ever seen one game that you actually use level as a resource. It's Minecraft. It's very confusing. Um, Especially since it's not linear, but that is another question, another thing. So I think I'm going to do here is actually just kind of we could let the creator choose whatever they want, put it in a data somewhere, but then they have to get passed in because this is script is not actually in the tree, right? Same problem as passing in the template you spawn, which is going to get uglier, unfortunately. We want to limit that, and so rather than letting the creators passing it in when it doesn't really matter, they can. There's pretty obvious names for these things, and they can change them uh, themselves if they want. We should make this a little more actually, because what I was about to say is we can use the player resource system. I like the player resource system. It's pretty simple. It allows you to network data per player, and it has a string name and an integer value. The problem is that it currently replicates kind of slowly. It takes about a second sometimes to replicate, and while that will, we intend to change it, but that's currently how it is, and there's no reason for us to, if we're actually trying to make a game and try to make it good, there's no reason for us to tie to that when we can do the exact same pattern we just did, spawning these helpers, and stick more data on them. These ones we can't use because they're per talent tree, not per player. We could have done that. We could have tied all the data into one string. That seems kind of ugly. Then we'd have to go through all the trees and that sort of thing. But we can have another one, which we're going to have anyway, basically, which is the generic player state replicator for this system, which has the properties on it. And one of those is how many talent points you have, and one of them is how many, what level you are. And I think we should tie this into the system right here. Admittedly, your game might use those for other things, and it's not, that's an interesting trade-off. We could have it be another API. This API needs to use those, and it needs to be able to spend them too. So you can't just pass in a here's how you read them. We need to also know how to remove them, which is one advantage of the resource system, is that it's all, you don't need these scripts all tied together. But at the same time, I like it being fast. It'll feel really strange if you click on a talent and it immediately turns gray that you have it, but your level doesn't change for 0.7 of a second. And so the one below it immediately highlights, like, ooh, if I'm fast, maybe I can get that one. And it'll be wrong every time. You can't get it, it will fail when you try, but you don't want it to get into that bad state and be so obvious about it. All right. So let's think about this. You could argue that the level and talent points are pretty tied into this system. That although the level, we're not going to have any way to give players levels. It could be your talent level or something. Or the level could be a resource and talent points could not be. I think we could do. Let the level be external, and the level doesn't, it's not something you're spending, it doesn't have that problem. I don't hate that. Some of you might hate that because it feels like a weird hybrid. We're going to do it for now. And we're not going to expose the name. It's just going to be level. That's the name of the resource. I hope you like it. All right, so check level, use level resource, check cost, implement talent point system. All right, we're actually going to put this last here. so that we can do the easier things first and not have a bunch of stuff, not go into this. This is going to have some pieces into it, right? So check level, easy. Um, and the question is, should this function do nothing if you don't have the requirements, or should it return a value? Do we care that it failed? Will something, will there be some messaging or something? Where will this actually show up? So the client shouldn't let you try to take a talent that you can't. And I don't think there's another way to add a talent. But at the same time, the reason we're doing this checking is, or one of the main reasons we're doing this checking is that you could spam click on it and this client won't know that you've already taken it by the time you click the second time, that sort of thing. So I think we just do nothing. I don't think we need an error message in log or anything like that. So if player get resource level less than talent data not required level, then return. End. Easy. I believe, I'm going to check everything here, but get resource, I like that I navigate to the thing and then just control F anyway. Resource, name gives you an integer, yep. Required level is almost certainly what I called it. I keep wanting to look at this. Yep, okay, we'll leave that open for now. Easy, so we did the first one. Check requirements, okay. For required talent data, name, is that what it returns? Get required talent data. Results. This function doesn't return anything. Who wrote this function? It didn't matter for the checking, but it matters now. So we're using the name to data pattern here. Again, we don't actually need the name. Talent data in pairs. Pairs. Okay, maybe we do want to collapse this function. It's huge. Sometimes I go find out exactly what I named a function, and then I'm like, yeah, that's really obvious. That's exactly what anyone would call it. There's no other name for this. If not, okay, so we say what required talents does this have, and then if the player doesn't have one of them, immediately we're out. Doesn't have it. Pretty straightforward. If so, change data. Okay. So then, we're basically copying these 3 lines, but doing some things to them. So we need the helper. We need to find the string that they currently have. We don't want to change anything else. And we need to change that 1 bit. So we need to local new talent string equals string.sub. This stands for substring. So the default behavior of this function is to go from, what did the documentation say? To go from, if j is absent, it's assumed to be -1, so it goes to the end of the thing. We're basically going to do a 3-piece thing. We're going to take the left piece, then add a 1, and then add the right piece, concatenate it all together. So prefix, suffix, basically doing their examples here. So we need talent string from 1 to this guy -1, so everything on the left. Dot 1. And then everything on the right becomes this guy +1. I admit this does not fit in a line. There may be a way. I wonder if there's a way to change, or strings immutable in Lua, I don't know. Can I change one character of a string? They're probably immutable. It's a pretty common thing that if you want to change a string, you end up with a new string. Yeah, okay, I don't see anything that would change something. We'll simply save these out to variables. Call prefix. Call suffix. Okay. So there's a new talent string, and then we just set it. Set networked custom property talent string this guy. Okay, great. So we haven't checked the cost, that's fine, but we've done everything else. So let us make this a little more interesting. We're going to get rid of 2 of the trees because we already know that works. Let us draw an example tree. So our tree is 3 by 6. Oop. 3. Oops. Here, I'm being particular about this. That's dumb. Perfectly evenly spaced lines. Okay. So we're gonna. I do this a lot with paint. Whatever. These require, that requires. Going down here. Requires both those. One over here that requires nothing. One here requires both. Something like that. I just noticed in my brain that we don't have any way to initialize these strings. So the talent trees start with zeros, or start with nothing at all, which is not ideal. Let us fix that right now while we think of it. So where do we get these? We spawn them here. It's the only place they're spawned. And we should take this line right here, put it there, but we're going to set it to all zeros. You start with no talents, makes sense. We need to know how many talents there are, which we talked about having and then decided we'd always have to iterate through it and wouldn't need that. Okay, maybe that's one way to do that. We could initialize zeros. The other way to do this is to say, like, only add as you need it. But the problem with that is, what happens if the first talent someone takes isn't the first one? Like these, we made a bunch of assumptions writing these functions that it would, function assumptions, that it would, the strings would already be there. So I kind of like this approach. Tree name. Yeah, we can figure out how long the tree name it tree is, how many talents it has right here. That's fine. Local talent count equals 0. For blank blank in pairs. Talent tree table. Tree talent tree name. Do. Okay, perfect. Oops. So we just iterate through the table, find out how many talents there are, and this is going to be. I wonder if Lua knows how to do this. Some languages you can multiply a string by an integer and it just concatenates a bunch of them together. It's probably going to error at me immediately. We're going to hit play and see. 311. Hey, look at that. That's the line I just wrote. Expected string, received number. He knows how to multiply strings? Okay, it does not multiply strings. I was just like, what is this nonsense? Okay, write this in a different way. This is probably not very efficient. Player join doesn't happen very often. Sue me. Local talent string. Repeated concatenation. Eh. Okay, now I go in here, talent string, 0. There's only one talent in the tree. That's all we got. If I make a bunch of talents, how many talents are in my paint? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Play. Same position, so I only get one talent. Right, okay, I need to change those things. Let's look at what I did here. I'm gonna split this up a little bit so I can reference. So x2, y1, that's good. x3, y2, okay. x2, y3, okay. x1, y4. I didn't actually have to use an order, but we will for convenience. x3, y4, x2, y5. All right, so I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then, just while we're here, let's do the requirements. So, Fireball doesn't require anything. Fireball 2, I need this to be a little lighter, requires above left. Fireball 3 just requires above. Fireball 4 requires nothing. 5 requires left and above. And 6 requires left and right. Okay. Now this is way too big. Play. Bam. Okay. This guy, we got 6 zeros. Perfect. And it didn't complain about our talent tree. I'll leave that there for reference. Okay. So we initialize the string in a slightly ugly way. I think it'll be fine. And Splat's been doing funny things. Try add player talent. We have a way to add a talent. We haven't tested these. So we gotta worry about costs, but we have to implement a system for that. Basically, we have to add another template we spawn that keeps track of how many talent points each player has, and add functions to get and set talent points, or get and subtract, or something like that. You'll want that on a UI for the client, so they know how many points they can spend. That seems fine. And they want to be able to add talent points from some other system, reward the player from gameplay. But for now, if we ignore that part exactly, you should be able to do the rest of this. We just need to, we don't have the UI, we haven't done that yet. We'll do that in the future. We might get into it today, but this is definitely multiple days worth of work. But actually having our test scripts just call some functions to try to give us talents would be helpful. How do we even get the talent data? That's the question. Get talent data at position is a function. What is it? We initialize player of talent, try add talent. So our UI work tomorrow, or whenever I do it, I might do something this weekend. I might just end up being angry at computers all weekend while I try to fix hardware problems. Our UI work is going to be all in the client, so it's not going to be in this utility script. The server doesn't care about that at all. So it means that I'll actually have another element that is the talent tree client with the script, with a bunch of templates that spawns, all that. It will need to know, it will need to be able to access the talent tree, right? It needs to know what trees there are and all the talents they have. We could have a getter that returns this straight out, or we could just actually put it in this table, but that would add a bunch of, like this thing is used, find all. It is used 12 times in this script. But we basically have a way, we need the client, the other scripts to be able to say what talents do we actually have? What are the trees? What are the talent data? So we can call this stuff. It's kind of what do I call this? It's a leaky interface in that you need the internals to use it. At the same time, the client, the other parts of this that are using it are not really external users. They're just, I put it in this one script so that the client server can share the stuff, not to abstract it away and hide it. Leak interfaces are bad, for what it's worth. You generally, if you do make an interface for someone else to use or get a clear demarcation between systems, then you shouldn't have to know how the system works to use it, which is not how Git works at all. So I'm thinking we just have a getter that returns this entire thing, because we don't need. I guess you could get like one that gives you all the talent trees and one that gives you the data for the tree. We haven't talked about how we haven't actually found a solution to how to or we mentioned that we will later add the ability to only expose certain trees to certain players, but for now we're not worrying about that. That could be a way that there could be a thing that the client or other callers only care about certain trees versus the entire thing. I think having the entire thing is fine. We will add that here. Utility dot get tree data. Talent tree table. Should I just call it table? It's like it literally gives you every talent tree. Sure. It's a little dangerous that there's no way to make this constant. Despite me naming it in all caps, the caller of this can go change data in there. If the client changes it, it doesn't actually change the behavior of the game. It just makes their display wrong. If the server changes it, that's really weird and not something that you should be able to do. I don't think Lua has any sort of const system. Maybe it does. Maybe I'm just totally wrong about this. Let us at least do a quick Google search. Const in Lua. Const int Lua. Lua is not for constants, but you can add the functionality for that by putting your constants in a table and making the table read only using metadata. Oh, that's sounds like trying to be clever. I mean, I could read into it and think about it more. I tend to avoid the metatable stuff as I like my code to be very readable and understandable, and I expect newer users to try to read into it. So I don't want to use the very advanced systems. Admittedly, they may be very useful for things like this. Right now, don't need it. All right, so we're going to go in here and start giving people talents at random and reading what talents they have. Something like that. Talent table equals blah, function tick. Sometimes I forget pairs. Okay. Player in pairs, then we have the talent table. Let's for talent tree in pair. These are for loops to get elements in a table. We could hard code this and just call it fire. In fact, whatever. This is test code for talent data. That's what we needed. All right, so it doesn't has. We're going to just print the entire thing, and we're going to put a task.wait like 3 at the end of this so that it doesn't spam horribly. So now if I hit play, bam, I don't have anything. Wait 3 seconds, it'll spam out the same thing again. Okay. Then, if math.random greater than 0.5, then we'll try to take the talent. Simple enough. How do you try add player data? All right. Player try add. Okay, so we don't have anything. We try added. Oof, let's pause that. We tried to add Fireball, and it apparently failed because the second time around we still don't have it. Fireball should have succeeded. Oh, we don't have any level. Yeah, okay. So these all require level 1. Let us change that. Let's make each one require a different level, literally just the number they are. And let's see. Player add resource level 1. So we don't have anything. We tried to add 2 and 3. Those should fail. We tried to add 6, 5, 3, and Fireball. Still had nothing, but we're now level 2, so we should have Fireball next time around. Aha! Got an error. Also, if we look at this guy, look at that. There's a 1 in there. So we got Fireball. And if you index them in the order, that was number 1. 332. Talent data. Does player have talent? Gave me a nil? What? So this only happened once we actually succeeded in adding a talent, right? So we ran this code, which all it did was change the string on this. What the heck? But it errors here. This shouldn't have changed at all. Well, it's unsolvable. No, we're going to do sprints. We're going to figure it out. That won't be too bad. There's no value. Really? How did you fail? Did it not like that? I assumed that these would give me empty strings and it would be fine concatenating those. That seemed like it was all right. I guess we print talent data here and try to do the same thing. I'm also just gonna, for iteration time, knock this down to 1. We can always look through the log and figure out. Boop, boop, okay. So we printed talent data right before calling does player have talent. And going to 332. Oh, I see. It's this right here. It's where this succeeded. So we're trying to add a player talent. And the talent we're trying to add actually requires a talent. Then I may have accidentally butchered that line. Okay, great. We don't need that. All right, so we did try to add things. We didn't add fireballs. We still had nothing. Player has fireball. We did add fireball. Okay. Now we've got. We didn't anything else. Fireball, fireball 3, fireball 4. Oh, we also got 2 apparently. We did. Okay. Now we have everything. Okay. Totally worked. That is great. So the last thing for this part is checking cost in the talent point system. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to spawn another template that is just the player state, not per talent tree. And it tells you how many talent points everyone has. And later it might tell you other things, but for now it'll just tell you how many talent points they have. So we're making a new group. Helper player state talents. Talents as a general term, not one specific talent tree. And this has a single integer, talent points. That is networked. And this is a template, also networked. I remember this time. Okay. So we need to get that into here as well so it can spawn these things. Previously we did this right in here. And how wide does this guy go? We could add another property here. This isn't the worst. You could argue these could be done in the actual server script itself and not in the utility script. But at the same time, there's some shared code here, like calling these. Maybe I should be doing that. Although, the catch is that actually spawning them, somewhere we need to pass this data in because the client needs to read them, needs to find them. We're not storing them into any tables, though. We're just finding them by name, right? We need the group. We don't need the templates themselves. Let me think about this a little bit. Maybe we'll save ourselves some trouble of passing these in by making the other part right now. Yeah, I think I'm gonna move this logic right here. So I'm gonna organize this a little bit. Let us actually make. So we're gonna put this in a group. Move this thing one level deeper. Talent trees, and this will be what did I call this entire stream? Talent selector. And in here, we're gonna have talent selector server and talent selector client. One giant template. And talent selector client. Okay. So he's going to take the place of the test scripts in a second. But let's see. So they both need the references to the utility script. Easy enough. They need reference to the talent trees itself. Sure. They need reference to, where did that go? Their player state group. Did I delete it or did I repurpose it? I repurposed it by accident. No, player state helpers. It's right here. Okay. So that will go in there. That's fine. They both need that. They both need everything here. And then the templates themselves, the server needs references to these guys. Okay. We're taking a big sidetrack here. Require. We're comparing this to this guy. This is the utility. Give it a blank line. It's kind of a different different custom property. Talent tree. I like calling these like for the user reading the hierarchy. Calling it talent trees makes sense. Calling it a root is a little bit less obvious. I expect less technical people to want to dive in and change these a lot. But in code, calling it root makes sense because that's what a coder would think of. I'm still going to call this the custom property the same thing and just pass it into the other function. Player state group, helper group. What did I call that before? Player state group. Yep. And we need to. Sorry, I forgot to rename the custom properties before I did this. Oh no, caps lock. Player state group. And then player state template. Well, basically the same thing, right? Which one's which? That's the question. Player state template, player state template, tree template. Okay. We do that. Player state template, player state tree template. Going on a tangent. Reorganize some things into server client scripts like spawning helpers. Okay, so this is what's we're pulling out of here to go in here. We'll worry about that in a minute. And then you'll notice that these are now identical functions. So they are no longer two functions, but one. And they'll do the same thing. I just noticed that after I talked about order, I have server and client instead of client and server. All right, so I still have this calling this function because it also does this other thing. I could, this may do more in the future. Otherwise, I could, combine these together. That doesn't make sense because it's likely to add more features, and this is still very clean. It does exactly one thing. And then it also, so what we need to do is this guy. Just found my normal pattern. I don't need comments. Comments are for suckers. Don't quote me on that. Talent trees, player string group. Okay, those are the things we wanted to pass to initialize. We actually connect these functions, and I see. We need the talent tree table. That is in here. We need a getter for it. It's fine. We will simply protect. Oops. I could store off another reference to it. This is basically what happens when I program a lot, make big systems. As I sit there debating how readable or how what's the most elegant way to do something. It's a pretty common pattern, I think. Local talent tree table. I'm going to use it twice in this function, so I'm going to store it to a variable. This function doesn't own it, so that's fine. We'll just store it like that. It is conceivable the talent tree tables could change later from some other system. I guess then this would break, but that's fine. We'll worry about that later. All right, so this should still work. We still initialize like we did here. We could put this test code in. I'm going to instead cut all of these out and leave the test code as it is. It's still useful as a test code, and we're going to get rid of that in a bit. We'll leave it for now. Okay. So our server code, this code, and we see if this crashes horribly. It does. Talent test client. Yes, that function no longer exists. That's right. I took this part out of the name. Okay. Talent selector server 12. How often you just look at the line, it tells you what's wrong. Here's the tablet. Right, these things change names because I'm not passing them in anymore. Talent test 9. Uh-huh. All right, so this failed because the scripts are not guaranteed to run in a certain order, and it wasn't initialized yet, but it had previously succeeded in that. I'm just going to catast.wait at the beginning of this script. Before we do this, they're not guaranteed to run in a certain order, but when we're just doing preview to test, they are guaranteed to all run in the first frame. So if I wait one frame, that succeeds. 21 on server. Player state helper. Really? That failed? No. Custom property name talent string found in object. Are you sure? Because I'm pretty sure that's a... Okay, so it didn't... it spawned the wrong object. I made the references the wrong names. And also, it didn't spawn it in the... with the parent. Parent equals player state group. Yeah, that's not a thing it knows about. Okay. So I flipped these references. You'll see. I want talent tree, which is player state tree template, not player state template. Wow. Okay. Now it adds us talents, and eventually we have more talents. Right, all the talents. Okay. Back to functioning. Perfect. We're going to mess around a little bit, and we're working on talent points. Okay, so we have this wonderful guy. We need to spawn one per player. It's going to be just like this. We're going to jam it into the same folder, I think, because we're just finding it by name. When it gets too unwieldy and we're worried about performance, we'll worry about that later, but I'm not worried. There's really, as far as I'm somewhat subject to the downfalls of engineers who hunt down things that they feel clever about or that aren't that important. I try to be good about that. But what I'm good about, don't optimize things that you aren't sure are actually problems. Like, don't write stupid code, don't write things that are horrible and obviously very slow, but don't bother trying to optimize things that, if you're trying to use a quick sort for an array that has 100 elements instead of insertion sort, and you're spending much time trying to figure out how quick sort works. Who cares? Insertion sort is going to be so fast, it doesn't matter. Even bogus sort would, no, don't use bogus sort. Any real sort would be fast enough that it will never show up. Bogus sort is really, really slow. It's bogus. So I thought about putting this in another function. We'll worry about that later. It feels a little bit inelegant to have the same string in multiple places. Let's do that next. Magic string function. What we're going to do is have this spawn that guy once per player. That's it. We don't need to, we do need to change the name. Otherwise, we're going to have a bunch of these that are identical. So local player state helper. I'm going to change the name of the other one in a second. It's basically the same line. Okay. And it doesn't have the talent tree name as part of it. It's just the ID. That's easy enough to find. So this is player state tree helper. Sure. And the exact same thing here. Maybe I won't do that, I think, because this is also another magic string. Player state helper equals. What did get player state helper do? That guy. We actually do want a function for this. Player state, right? Because clients also need to be able to find these, and you want them to follow the same logic, and they're not spawning them. So since these are tree helpers now, right? This is now player state tree helper. Player state helper, player state helper, get player state helper. Okay, we're going to write this function. This function's easy. It doesn't say have tree in the name, doesn't have this. Find child by name, it's much simpler. Okay. Same deal. get player state helper. If it's there, then we destroy it. Okay. It better be there. So without actually using these things at all, we should now have two. This guy's got talent points. This one's got talent string. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to actually implement the cost, which means we need functions for adding talent points and getting the current value. Or I guess adding, getting, and removing. There's a question here, kind of a philosophical question of this. We're exposing an API. We're making a bunch of functions that things can call. Are these totally internal or are these external? Because the function to add talent points is going to reach outside of the talent selector, right? The game, whoever makes a game with this needs to be able to do that however they want. Whereas, and you might care about some of these things, but you might like these things are basically internal. I could have two separate scripts that do this and have one of them require the other. I think I can do that. No, that's what the feature's for, right? There's no way to have a reference, so there's no way for one to require the other without actually passing it in, which feels kind of strange. Why don't we just go with it for now, put it in the same file, and other systems will require this. It'll be a little weird, but down the road we could change it if that that comes in, or if this starts to be unwieldy and a problem, we could split it apart. All right, so we're adding more functions. Function utility dot add player talent points. Server only. I'm going to look at, I mentioned before the comments in the other scripts. Did I actually check that this was server only or client only? Oh, for the client only ones, it doesn't matter. Let us save and close for a second. Go to test map. What do I have in here? Do I have any APIs? So this is server. This client, yeah, I have no way to actually check that they're calling it in the right context. Okay. Like that I load back into a level that has literally nothing in it. Add player talent points. Player points. And do I want just change, just add or remove? No, because the philosophical split here, the game shouldn't be able to remove talent points. Maybe it should. Get player talent points. Like how much I want to help myself or other people. Client and server only. Client and server. Okay. These functions should be pretty straightforward. They're all going to call get player state helper. Cool. I see. Player state helper. All right. So I want to add, well, I think of it. I want to rename these variables up here that are now tree helpers. Okay. Boop, boop. Return player state helper. Get custom property talent points. I'm starting to think that I maybe should have called level capital L, which I will change because I'm using capitalization everywhere else. Current points. So for what it's worth, I can't check that they're actually calling this on the server, but if they call this on the client, I'll just give them a script error because you can't call set network custom property on the client, which is fine. Current points plus points. added points. Let's be a little more specific. Removed points. You can't have a problem when you add. You can have a problem when you subtract. Shouldn't go negative. Maybe. Who's calling this function anyway? It's like, how much do I want to help myself, and how much is, if I'm removing more points than I have, then that's definitely just an error. I could imagine someone using this and wanting some penalty or something where it just removes 1,000 points from you and not wanting it to, as a way they just want it set to 0, or that they want it, well, basically they'd want it set to 0. They wouldn't want it to go negative. And they wouldn't want to have to check themselves and say, having to do the work to figure out how many points you have, although that's just a function call. So, you know what? If, or we don't even bother checking. And if you do it, that's what it does. In which case, why do we have two functions? We're in error. It's easy enough to do this correctly. Trying to stringed up format, really. Trying to remove talent points from player who only has, okay. Removed points. Player.name, current points. That is a long. Okay. So you can't remove points you don't have. But now we have the interface to add, remove, and get. And that means try add player talent can now handle actually doing this. It's conceivable that these didn't need to be exposed, but I think they do. I think that the client script will need to get your talent points at least, and other scripts will need to add talent points. Removing, maybe not. Maybe that's internal, right, in this function. Local talent points equals utility dot. We can call this function because all these functions will be defined before any of them is ever called. If talent points less than talent data dot cost, then return. Okay, that's the error case. And then if we succeeded, we're going to set this string, and we're also going to utility dot remove player talent points player talent data dot cost. Okay, so if you succeed in getting the talent, it should remove that many points. And in our test script, we're going to call this guy. Player add player talent points, player 1. Okay, so you get 1 talent point each time. Our talents cost some things. Where's our costs? We're going to make them cost more and more, so it will fail to get the later ones for quite a while. All right, so now we have Fireball and Fireball 2. Took a little while, but you notice that it's taken quite a while to get anything else. I'm going to read this. We should have one more at this point. I think we have Fireball 3. What does our player state helper say? It only has 3 ones. What happened to the zeros? Oh no! We have a bug. We'll about this in a minute. I'm surprised it didn't give a script error, that it was happy to read bytes out of strings that weren't there. Do we have 4, 5, or 6 yet? Or have we gotten into an impossible state? We're not getting 4, and we have no talent points at all. Aha! We have a bug. We have more than one bug. Here's the bug. We are adding talents that we already have. And we didn't check that. So in try add player talent, we checked if you have the required talents. We didn't check if you already have the talent. If you already have the talent, we probably shouldn't do any of this. That is a fourth error case. If utility does player have talent, player talent data, then return. All right, you already have it, get nothing. So that talent string immediately was just blank. Where's a single 0? Now a single 1. We're going to figure out what happened to that initialization code in a second, but hopefully, if I wait a little bit, you're watching, there's 3 1s on the screen, 4 1s. How many talent points do we have? 0, we just got the 5th one. 2, 3, if we look at our talent points, we have 2, we have to wait till we have 6 talent points. That's right, let me select it. And now we have it. If we wait for a while, mount up and fly around. Woo! Alright, we're going to have 8 talent points, we have all the talents. Great. Okay, let's get these out of here, we don't need those. What we need to do is figure out why this failed to actually get... So we called initialize before we connected. So let us print A right here to say how many times did this? 1. You only found 1 talent. Oh, that's how many trees there are, not how many talents there are in a tree. How did we mess that up? How did this work before? I guess it worked before because maybe when we changed over to this, we broke it a little bit. We need to index this on talent tree name. That's not as bad a bug as I was worried. Worried about some timing issues. So we're actually looking through the one tree to see how many things are in there. Pause, we'll see there's a bunch of zeros back again. Okay, great. Okay, so we've been putting cost in the talent point system, and we have this magic string function we want to do. Oh man, the later I raid, the more people, the later I stream, the more people show up. I was worried that Fridays were not a good night to stream, but welcome everyone. And yet people are very quiet. Or my chat's broken. Oh, hello. There actually are people there. Okay. Like, this is literally the first message in 2.5 hours, and I'm like, maybe it's broken. All right, so we wanted to clean up this code a little bit. We've got this magic function and this, which is not magic, but it's called in a couple places, and I want to be able to change it later and not have it, not have to remember all the places I said it. So those are actually going to be exposed because they're used here as well. So these, we'll probably need some organization here at some point. There's sort of like the initializers, an accessor, some useful things, more useful things, some things that are sort of internal. Some people don't care much about this. I have seen some code that is just all over the place in order, especially bad C++. I've complained about this, and some people are like, I don't mind that at all. In C++, if you have like a class, or even just if you're using base C, you have a header file that like lists all the functions, and the CP file that actually declares or just like implements them. And I've seen cases where they're just very different orders and just chaos. This is maddening to me. They should be the same. Who are you people? C# doesn't let you do this. C# is pretty nice. All right. Get player state helper name. Get player state tree helper name. Talent tree name. These look like they don't do much, but they're called in a few places, as I just described. Actually, literally copy that whole thing right there. Copy this whole thing right there. Even better, because I use the same variable names, I can do the same thing over here where I do the same thing. Yeah. And I hope I use the same variable names here. Talent tree name. I sure did. Great. Paid off for my consistency. Look at those couple seconds I saved. All right. We're going to make sure that actually works. No errors. I appear to be having talents. These things are doing their things. I just picked up, ooh, I got talent 3 before talent 2. If I refer back to my excellent diagram here, you'll see talent 3 doesn't actually require talent 2. And I could have gotten talent 4, 5, there's 4, but I was never level 4 yet. Okay. That's what I wanted. Ooh, error on exit. Talent selector server 29. What did it not like? Get player state helper. Call a nil value. That is true, because player state helper is over here. That's not what yeah, I need to do that. Wrote that code and didn't test it. I feel like it didn't update. Nope, still didn't like that. Did I not call get player state helper? Oh, uh-huh. These don't work at all because those functions are not actually exposed. Maybe they should be. Yeah, okay. Sort of whoops. Yeah, that was okay. I just moved a function that looked like it was very small and it was not. So they are still blurring this line between things that are external and not. These are all internal, right? But the things that are in here are things that would be shared between multiple places, such as the other function and the server script, or the client would need these, which is why they're in here. The client will need to be able to find these things so it can get the properties off them and know what to display. As I start making this client, it will become more clear. 351. I just moved a bunch of code and it didn't like that. Aha. All the places I call this, it's now in utility. Makes sense. Get player state tree helper. Okay. And hopefully that works. Nope. 313. Attempt to call a nil value. Get player trait. That's not. I didn't save. Yep, okay. Thing is still functioning. Great. What do we have next? Client UI. I think we are actually to that point. All of our functions here are implemented. They do things. All right, so client UI is a big undertaking. We're gonna describe it a little bit and get started, but it's gonna be quite a mess. Let us move over the client stuff first. I'm just gonna delete this script. We don't need a client test script anymore. So what do we have here? All right, utility. Yep, I agree with that. We have talent trees. And then we have player street group. Okay, we don't need those. Those are the same three properties. I was just making sure that I named them correctly and that kind of thing. And then initialize talent tree data. That would be at the bottom of the script, which it is because there's nothing in here. Great. Things still work? No. 109. What did I break? Is a folder. Ah, yes. It is not a folder. That would imply root. Oh, even worse. The thing I passed into this was not correct. Tree root is not even defined. Yep. Okay. So this script is going to start doing a lot of things, right? Because it's got to construct all this UI. And the way I'm going to do this is when you start the game, when you connect, it's going to construct all the UI you need, and then hide it. It'll just be hidden, and at a later time, it will show it and hide it. I'm not going to construct and deconstruct it every time you show the talents. That would be something that you could, depending on the game, you might just literally have a hotkey on your keyboard. You know, and while you hit N, it appears. You hit N again, it disappears. You can slam that button as much as you want. I don't want to construct and deconstruct a bunch of things every time and traverse the tree. I just want to hide it. But I might move them around. You know, you might be able to scroll up and down inside of a tree. It might be too big. You might be able to scroll left and right if you had too many trees to show on your screen, or you might, let's look at that a little bit. You might change what trees are available to you. You know, if you have a game where you start with fire available and then later you get frost. I don't know. This is going to be there's no way I'm going to be able to include all the things that everyone could want for a game because there's so many ways you could want to do this. So, we're going to think about the UI a little bit. Let's look at our UI available options here. They're listed in several places. They're here, they're up here, but this is quick because we're going to drag a bunch of them in. We're going to make some more templates. So I haven't actually used some of these. Some of this is going to be kind of exploratory for me, and you might tell me that I'm doing something wrong, or you might watch and learn as I also learn. I've never used buttons in Core. They seem very useful. They seem to have, I've played with them a little bit to the point where I see that they actually have the features I'd hope they would have, which is great, and let's hope that they work well. I've never used a scroll panel. I don't know what kind of built-in interaction that has, but it seems like what we want here. So a panel is just a sub-element that you can use to position things correctly or nicely. Scroll panel seems good. We want our talent trees to be exactly as wide as fits nicely, but if you wanted to make your talent trees very tall, like WoW did, and as they went from the first few expansions, they kept adding more rows to the bottom and not changing anything else. They got to the point where they really had to scroll quite a bit. So we'll use those. So what I'm imagining is that you have a single, well, where is it here? Container, which I will, if I drag it in, you get a container with you, right? You need a container for anything. So you get a container, and inside of it, we've got one scroll panel per talent tree. So we'll have like this. Let's drag this around a little bit. Let's delete that and make this one put over there, and this one over there. Okay, we got 3 talent trees. And each one's going to have an image that will inherit its parent size. It'll have no offset, and it'll have no image. That's very useful. Aha, look at it scroll. How convenient. We might not have it inherit the size. We'll think about this a little bit. We'll set it from script. Actually, I'm just going to delete these two and duplicate a little bit later. And on top of that image, so we've got the scroll panel for the talent. We've got the image, or for the talent tree. Then it's going to have a bunch of buttons on it. And there is so the hierarchy order doesn't really matter in Core, but it does matter for UI layering, and we need things to be on top of each other in the right way. So if I made this a square and made it colored, button color, boom, now you can actually see it. If we had a very simple talent tree that was only 2 wide, you can imagine something like this. There's your talent tree. If I, let's not inherit the height. How tall is this guy? 695. Let's make this 1,000. Okay, that does scroll over. That's sweet. Who made this? I actually don't know the answer. I'm gonna guess. I have a guess. I'm not gonna dox my coworkers, you know. Um, yeah, something like that. And then there's more. Don't worry. All right, so we're gonna spawn one of these per talent tree. We're gonna spawn one of these per talent. So that's 2 templates. This will just be part of the hierarchy. It'll be in this client context. Um, then we need a third template. Where is it? Image. So we'll put these in here too. Maybe we'll put these in groups. Talents. Uh, Markers. We'll think about how to this is going to be black with skinny length 100-ish. Where's rotation? Isn't that a thing we can do to these? Rotate angle 45. Haha. I want to get 45. All right. So we're gonna use an image, like an arrow image or something, to make this. Oh man, all these people saying hi in chat. In fact, I believe there is just an arrow. That guy. Bam. All right, now I don't want it to be super skinny anymore. Boop. Rotation angle. Nope, not you. Oh, I see it's left, so we need 135? Negative 135? Hey, okay. Bam. That's a requirement. Duplicate that over here. Set it to negative 90. This kind of deal. Make it a little smaller, maybe. All right. So we're going to programmatically spawn all these arrows and make them look nice. So you can tell what requires what. So that's a third template. We have one template for the tree, one template for the talent, one template for the requirements. And last, and we only need one of these, so we maybe don't even have to spawn it, is the tooltip, right? Because you can never mouse over 2 talents at once. We just move the thing around as you do whatever you're doing. Every time you hover over a button, it spawns it. But we'd have a tooltip template, which includes a bunch of info. Nope, I need to go up here. It would need to include a lot of this info. Required level, description. We're going to use the icon color for these guys. Cost. So level, description, cost, all need to be in a big block. So we'd have something like a panel with another image. Do that again. And then make this bigger. And then it's going to have a text box on it. Several text boxes. This is my talent description. And then maybe 2 more text boxes. One up here. Cost 1, also black. And we'll make this look a lot better so that Jonathan doesn't cry. Required level. All right, something like that. So this is one template, or I guess just static in the hierarchy, because each client only ever needs one. Then we have a template for the tree, a template for the button, and a template for the requirement indicator. And Brady, you and your white name and my white theme. Last time I was like, who is this guy with an invisible name? And afterward I figured it out. All right, so let us see how we can do this, how we can actually split this up. So the button, does this have all the pieces it needs? If we wanted to put, let's look for some icons. The boat icon of this guy. We wanted to color it. Does it have a background color? No, background color is a little strange here. So I'm gonna do a little experiment here. Hovered, pressed, disabled. Okay, so we're actually going to use disabled state, right? That's the you can't check the thing because you don't have the requirements. It doesn't have a background color though, which bugs me. I think we're going to need an image with the button here. Because if I play, I can pause and you can see it change when I hover it. And change when I press it. That's pretty cool. Glad that works in pause. I don't have to write a script to let me interact with it. Yep, I figured. All right, so that is all right. I want a background color, right? You want some sort of nice background to indicate that these are talents and not just isolated things. So this will have an image with it, and a second image with it. Image. 100, 100. I'm just copying these properties over. Copying those properties. I give this like a darker color. Okay, now that looks like a hideous thing. A darker color that kind of matches. Okay, that looks like a talent button. I don't need a border. Maybe I need a border. I could, where's one of the ones with a nice border on it? If I search for border, nope. Uh-huh. There's frames, which I actually like a lot, but then it's just that. Then we need a second image, which maybe is literally what we want to do. We want to make this look good. So this guy, we clear value and give it a different color. Or no, cancel that. We'll make this guy black. And on top of the other one, haha. And this guy, must be that guy now. Look at that. All right. Make this one a little bit smaller. As an example. All right. We have a good looking button. We will improve upon this dramatically as we go. I'm just figuring out exactly what's the minimum we need for a button. So I think that's pretty good. I'm a little worried about these arrows, the diagonal ones and the straight ones not being the right sizes, to the point where I might manually construct an arrow out of pieces or have the middle piece get extended. Like if you have a talent that requires 1-2 above it, I don't want the arrow to just be enormous. I want the arrow to be the same and longer. And if I stretch it, then it will stretch the whole thing, right? If I take this guy and do, whoop, that didn't work. That's just horrible. Who wrote this? You see it gets all stretchy. Seems like rotation breaks scaling. All right, so we've got our button. It's got 3 pieces to it. If we hit play and pause, do the images interact with, do they block me from hovering over it? Not really. Oh, that's interesting. I'm wondering about if you want your mouse cursor to be able to highlight the whole thing, you want it bigger, but if I make it bigger, the icon's too big. And I don't think I have a way to make the image smaller. I could make the frame much thinner, so this is much closer. That's probably what I'll do. Instead of using that guy, I'll use something like this. Instead of using that frame, okay, something like that. This appears to not have changed how it looked at all. Oh, come in preview mode, it's not changing anything, of course. Frame beveled. 02. Wasn't there a really thin one that I just looked at? That looks great. Then I can make the button bigger without it being a problem. So I pause. You see that this is a pretty thin edge you won't really notice, but the icon still looks pretty nice. Doesn't look like it's pushed against the edges or anything like that. Okay, so I'll put this in a group and make a template out of it. Talent button template. I don't need to put talent. Helper talent button. Okay, there's one template. When I do this sort of thing, so when I spawn these, I'm going to need to change a bunch of properties on the pieces. So I need references to the pieces so I can access them. I don't need to change the frame. I might want to change the background. In fact, I might even use the property on the talents here that is the icon color. I might actually use that backwards. I might make the background the color and the icon always black or something like that. So if I want this to be red, I could do something like this. This is reasonable. Hmm. Anyway, I need to have references to these things where I'm going with this. I need a reference to the button so I can actually interact with it. This is super important. These are going to be stuck in a table somewhere because there's going to be a ton of them. Or I will hook them up to a, like when I spawn them, I will hook up some handlers for the button events. I believe buttons have a bunch of events actually. UI button. Clicked event, pressed event, released event, hovered event, unhovered event. Right. So we use these to do the tooltip. I think we want to do. I think I want to do good button behavior. This is one of my maybe pet peeve isn't the right word. One of the pieces I've gone pretty deep into and feel strongly about. I spent a whole bunch of time writing a UI system in an independent project a couple years ago, and I did basically do a bunch of research looking at how programs work, and if I let's see, if I press on this refresh button, you'll notice it doesn't refresh. I'm just holding the mouse button down. When I let go, it refreshes. And if I click on it and move my mouse cursor off it and let go, nothing happens. I don't know that behavior is built in. Maybe it is. Uh, oh, look at that. It totally is. I didn't read the description. Triggers the mouse button up if both down and up are inside the button. Great. So we can just use that. Here are down and up events. I don't care about those. So we still have 3 handlers per button. That's going to be a bunch of things. Thank you. Whoever, like I said before, whoever wrote these things, great job. I will probably change my tune in a month in a few streams when I'm actually using them. Maybe next stream. Probably next stream. All right. Anyway, this needs reference to the button. It doesn't need a reference to the frame, hopefully, but it does need a reference to the background to color it. And the frame being black is always fine. So we're going to do that. We're going to say background, I can spell, and button. Simple enough. Update, and we're going to drag this guy down here, and he'll become invisible because he's no longer inside of a This will become invisible because it's no longer inside of a container. Actually, I do need a reference to the third part because I'm going to resize these. Depending on how large you make your talent trees, we're going to calculate exactly where to put things and how big they should be. If you want to make enormous talent trees that are 6 wide and 15 tall, then I don't want them to be not fit on your screen. I want just to make the button smaller. So I'm going to make one more piece here. That is the frame, I believe. Let's make sure I actually got that correctly. So that is the second one, and that is the first one. Okay, great. And the last bit of this is anchor and dock. When you're using UI, if you don't set these up and just drag things where you want them, you're in for a lot of pain. So all 3 of these should be center because you put this whole thing exactly where you want it. I could do up left. I think center works better for me when I'm organizing pieces. They're not stuck to a corner of a thing. The group is ignored. So this is related to whatever parent it is above that, which will be could be the image. I might put a panel in there. Probably not. Probably just the background. Or maybe it'll be children or siblings of the image. It'll be the scroll panel itself. That makes sense. But well, maybe top left is what I want here. Maybe I'm going to know how big this thing is, and I'm going to say, each talent is 60 wide, and this whole thing is 200 wide, and there's 200, some units between them. And I can just use coordinates to the top left corner, or I can use coordinates to the middle. from the middle of this. From the middle of this is a lot harder. I think top left is what I want here. I changed my mind. Okay. That being said, I'm going to reset the offset because it'll be set from script. Width and height, same deal. I want them to be a reasonable size if I'm debugging things, but they're all getting set from script anyway. Okay. Let's leave that where it is for now. We're going to leave it in the hierarchy because we'll probably change it. Okay, so the markers. This is just a single image for now. Question is, how do I make it longer and not look bad? So if I take this image and clear its value and put it over here and give it an angle, can I make it line up correctly and not look stupid? That is the question. Almost. Look at that. All right, I made a longer arrow. Um, that's some magic trickery based on this icon that I'll have to pick exactly the right sizes, but that seems better to me than making the arrow out of 3 images. That's just one simpler. Well, maybe. The 3 images isn't actually that bad, right? Because it's just 3 rectangles. Then I don't have to worry about exactly lining up with the thing that maybe will change down the road. Yeah, let's do the 3 images. You'll notice I'm just clearing the image entirely instead of finding one of the rectangle images. The reason I'm doing that is if you look very closely, let me put these in exactly the same spot. Let me duplicate this guy. That's what I do. So I have 2 images in exactly the same spot that both have BG flat, and I'm going to clear one of them and make the other one colored and change their order. Okay, you see it. It's bigger. Banana icons. Oh, jeez. Yep. That is, wow. All right. Anyway, it's bigger. The background flat icon has a little border around it. It looks nice. It's got a little smoothing. If you're really just constructing stuff out of pure geometry, empty is a perfect square. Or literally, every pixel is the same color, which is what I want here. All right, so 3 of these in a group together makes an arrow, and we'll have to resize it in a meaningful way. And I'm not sure, like resize and position them correctly. I don't know how much we should do that manually versus having them know how to deal with themselves. Or like, can I put them in a state where it's easy to, I can skip some steps in making them exactly the arrow I want. I don't know. Let me think about this a little bit. Oh, they're in a panel. They don't exist outside the panel. What's 90 less than that? 135. Okay. 180. Nope. 270. Sure. That is very confusing behavior. I just can't grab the middle selector there. Okay. So if I do something like this, so these are going to have to resize based on everything, right? The talents sizes will be calculated at runtime to fit the size of the trees that you have. Basically based on how wide is the talent tree, how many talent trees are you showing at once. Which is another thing we'll have to figure out. How do we even pick that information? We already have how wide the talent trees are. They're here. But how many do you show at once? Because even if you really have 8 talent trees and your game wants the player to be able to use all of them, you don't want to display 8 on the screen and have them be tiny. You'd want to have some system to work with that. Maybe we won't worry about that for now. Maybe we'll just show all the talent trees you have all the time. That seems reasonable. Anyway, you still want to be able to scale these arrows a little bit, and you want the tip of the arrow to match the size of the icon, and you want the whole thing to go to the next one in a good way. I think we'll just write this just make a template that says reimages it with nothing else and not even worry about their properties. And then we will have the script handle it, and when we're writing the script, we'll probably find we need to change this template a little bit. So I'm just going to reset all this to default, put these in a group, bring it down here, helper, talent requirement arrow. And 1, 2, 3. Literally, these are interchangeable. Image 1, image 2, and image 3. Okay. All right, then this guy. So inside of here, this was my tooltip. So we're going to drag this whole thing up here. That's our UI container that everything's going to be inside of. And tooltip panel. Right there. This is kind of ugly, but that's all we need. There's only need one of these per player. And then the rest of this is this thing here, the scroll panel. And the background. And maybe we need folders inside of it. The question is how much do we need to order this if it's only spawned at runtime. So we're going to spawn a bunch of these guys as children of this panel. Yeah, I don't think we need any of this other stuff. I think we just need the panel and the image. And the background, haha. We may find we want to put some properties on the trees themselves, like a general color theme or background color for the tree. We'll worry about that later, but for now, it's down here, make it a group. I guess I don't need to make these groups. The groups don't actually matter in the hierarchy of the UI stuff. They don't do much. And again, we're resizing and positioning these all from script. This inheritance parent width, I like that. The height is going to be set. And I didn't even, for this guy, I didn't talk about, these are all going to be relative to the panel, the scroll panel. So top left is fine for the anchor and dock as well. Just using UI space there. Although, you could argue that I'd want to set it from script where the middle of the thing is, not where the top left is. And I'll have to, basically I'm going to calculate how big each icon is and then where they go and not want to worry about their size again in that calculation. That makes sense. So which one is which? Point on parent to attach to, point on self to use as anchor. That's going to be middle center. Okay, update that guy. Same deal here. I'm glad those tooltips are really spot on. So the scroll panel, this whole system, so for the top level thing, this is the one that's just going to be, its parent's going to be the container. Its root is of your screen, and we want these to be, we don't want to care about the size of the screen. We just want to care about from the center. So the dock is middle center, and anchor also middle center. That seems fine. Whatever, we're resetting these values from script. Panel and image. The image actually needs to be a child of the panel, so I'm going to get rid of the group here. Oh, that doesn't do what I want. I'm going to get rid of the group here. And the image, top left, it doesn't matter. All we're setting on this guy is the height. Sure. And this needs reference to it. Background image. Okay. Helper talent tree panel. Okay, we have 3 helpers. This guy is the last one. I want to talk about the anchoring and docking a little bit, and then we're going to start setting preferences in this and get to the real meat of this next stream, which is probably this weekend, depending on how functional my computer is. I'll definitely do one Monday, but I may be doing some fresh installing and replacing hardware and stuff. All right, so these guys, this would be resized a bunch maybe, depending on how much text there is, or maybe we'll just make a static size, and if you put too much text in, there's kind of some missing functionality of like, given the text, how big does this guy want to be? Um, and none of these other things have text on them, but these checkboxes are pretty important to be careful of. Do you want things to wrap or clip or neither or both? Um, that doesn't even say required. So this guy definitely wraps. I also want him to clip. If your description is super long and doesn't fit, I don't want it to go off the bottom of the tooltip. That looks dumb. For this guy, the cost, it shouldn't actually have this issue at all, but if it does, it's going to look really bad if the cost is down here. So I'm not going to wrap, and I am going to clip. You could say I don't, if it just goes right over the required level, that's fine. If your cost is $1 million, just spit it out. But I think that would also look kind of bad. And maybe if someone wants to go with crazy numbers, they should just change this template a little bit of these fields. Same thing with this. Don't want to run off the end. Don't want to go to the next line. Okay. Tooltip panels. Its position will be set by your mouse cursor position. And so it doesn't have a panel as a child. Its position is not relative to anything. It's just on your screen. The mouse cursor position is the same. 0, 0 is top left corner, as UI space tends to be, like you're reading a book or any text at all. And therefore, just be able to set its position to exactly where your mouse cursor is makes sense. If I look at a tooltip, you'll notice it tends to be down to the right. So, very convenient. We'll keep it top left. Exactly what we need. Things do tend to not run off the edge of the screen, and I will probably want to handle that case as well. In the same way, we'll write that script. For the UI image that's a background, it's inheriting the size. Doesn't matter what the anchor and dock are. We don't need references on the panel because this is a static one. We can just put the references right on the client script to adjust these fields. We do need a reference to the panel as a whole to hide it though. So if we start making references here, image, 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 so many references. Let's put these in the order that they make sense to me. Oops. Okay. So tree panel template. Button, talent button template. Maybe I'll put talent in the one above. Just take helper out. Talent requirement arrow. Template. Okay. And the first box is description, cost, level. Tooltip description text. Tooltip cost text. Tooltip required level text. Okay. We're getting there. I'm wondering about the anchors and docks on these guys. If a person comes in here and says, oh, I want the tooltip to be way bigger, and they would have to manually drag it, we're not going to change the size of this thing at all. We're not going to, from script, we're just going to leave it exactly how it is and just move it where it is and change the text and let this one in the hierarchy dictate what it looks like. So we can worry about that later. I think this is fine. It's not like sometimes when the anchors and docks matter a lot. If you're going to like have a wider monitor or going to resize the thing and like different pieces of it, you want some pieces to stay nicely aligned in the middle and some pieces to go to the corners. In this case, it's a single box that has some text boxes in it, and they should always be, I could say this should be top left and this one should be top right, and this one should be bottom, middle, or something, and so I can align them nicely. Maybe that's true. We'll worry about that when we make it work, and it looks terrible. Okay, so we have all of our properties that I think we need. Don't need that container anymore. These things we're leaving here so we can update them, but they're not actually doing anything. Let's grab this ridiculous block of text and paste it in here. So we got the first three. Great. And now we have a bunch more. The real convenient part about this block of text for me is that it puts wait for object in the correct things, so you never have to worry about that bug, which is to say where you forgot to add it or copied something and had it where you didn't need it. Tooltip panel. Cost text. Tooltip required. Level text. Just copying all these things. Talent tree panel. Template. Talents. Button template. Talent. Requirement. Arrow template. Okay. So where we're going with this, I'm probably just going to describe what we're going to do, maybe write some function signatures, and then call it a night, is that we are going to construct it. That is first. Then we're going to, as before, or as I wrote these before, show and hide, worry about interaction cost, and sending information to the server. Okay, construction is first. So we're going to, we read through all the talent trees. This is great. We're going to end up calling functions that we defined so we can have this organized all rather than having a ton of code just right here. But we're going to, per talent tree, spawn one of these, figure out all the math of where it should be, position it, and color the background. That's the wrong one. This guy. Position it and color the background, and size it. That's step one. Let me write some comments. Spawn tree, template per tree, position and size. Okay. Then spawn button template per talent in each tree. I want these to be children of that panel, so they scroll correctly. And for those, position, size, set color, set icon, set up handlers. Then we're going to spawn requirement arrow templates in each tree, children of the panel, also position and size. So that'll make the trees look goodish. And then we're going to hook up tooltip behavior. I think we'll do that before we do the other things. We're probably missing a few things here, but that is roughly the steps we're going to go for. This doesn't sound so bad. It is really nice to take a large project and break it down into pieces rather than trying to approach it all at once and being terrified. Anyway, I think I'm going to stop there rather than getting, I've got 3 minutes till I want to generally end my stream rather than getting 2 lines into a function. I appreciate everyone watching. I'm definitely going to try to do more this weekend. Like I said, we're looking at computer issues and stuff that I'm trying to battle out, but clearly my computer is functioning for streaming, just not functioning for some other things, and my fancy microphone makes my computer stop responding, so we're using the headset mic, but you can understand me. It's not too bad. And thank you all. See you again soon.